Hey guys! Today I'm making a barbecue chicken pizza with a side of coleslaw, which feels like an incredibly summery combination. As always, both recipes are from this wonderful cookbook, Pizza Night by Stafford. I'll also be giving you the scoop on last week's pizza and salad recipes, dishing on what went right, what went wrong, and what I learned along the way. And with that, it is time to go in depth. Hi, I'm Maddie Burton, and I write a newsletter called On the Cusp. That's where I first wrote about my goal to cook my way through Stafford's cookbook, Pizza Night. I'm documenting that project in this video series, where you can hang out in my home kitchen, see the results of that personal challenge, and learn right alongside me. More broadly though, this series is an exploration of the joys and frustrations that come from going in depth on any pursuit or hobby that captures our imagination. My biggest hope is that this series inspires you to start or continue going in depth on a meaningful pursuit of your own. You can follow along with this project on YouTube or by subscribing to my newsletter at newsletter.maddieburton.com. And if you'd like to cook your way through this cookbook too, I would love it if you joined me. Below this video, I will include my own personal bookshop.org link where you can buy a copy of Allie's cookbook while supporting this video series in the process. Last week, I made a shrimp pizza with roasted lemon salsa. It was inspired by a dish that the author's kids raved about after they visited a pizzeria called Bufalina. This pizza was wonderful and kind of unlike any pizza I had had before. The roasted lemon salsa was bright and tart and did bring a hint of bitterness, but that was balanced out nicely by the olive oil and fresh parsley that went into it. That, plus the creaminess of the cheese and the juicy brininess of the shrimp made for a really balanced dish. I had been worried about the lemon salsa being a little bit too bitter, but that ended up being not a concern whatsoever. I had also been a little bit concerned about putting raw shrimp on pizza because of the short cooking time in my outdoor pizza oven, but that ended up being a non-issue as well, and everything was perfectly cooked. The one substitution I made was taking the Neapolitan crust that was called for and using a thin crust instead, because that's what I happen to have in my freezer. And I will say that thin crust pizza continues to be my nemesis. After topping the pizza, we realized that it was definitely not moving on the peel and we were going to have an impossible time launching it into the oven. But the crisis was narrowly averted by lifting up the already topped pizza very gingerly with a thin flat knife and throwing loads of extra semolina under the crust. That averted the sticking issue and allowed us to launch it into the oven without problems. Last week's salad recipe was my mother's horiyatiki salad. And when I say my mother, it's not my mother, but the author's mother, who inspired this spin on a traditional Greek dish. And I've got to say, for a pizza cookbook, I continue to be bowled over by the salads. This one was almost binge-worthy with the sweet cherry tomatoes. Cucumber, red onion, and red pepper played really nice supporting roles there. And the crisp vegetables were so tasty that I didn't even mind the olives in the recipe. The oil and vinegar dressing was super easy. The sliced feta on top of the salad was amazing. And the saltiness of the capers and the freshness of the dill really rounded out everything perfectly. I prepared this salad after going for a long run, and it was a lot of stuff to chop up, especially when I was feeling a little bit tired, but the payoff was huge. Plus, I loved this particular pizza and salad combination together. Any bitter or briny flavors of the pizza were really nicely balanced by the sweetness and freshness of the salad. Add in the acidity of the dressing, and it was just perfect. Plus, the salad was fabulous the next day too. If you happen to be cooking through this cookbook along with me, hop into the comments and let me know how this pairing went for you. As I mentioned earlier, I'm making a barbecue chicken pizza. Technically, the recipe calls for this pizza to be grilled, but I'm going to use my backyard pizza oven instead. And I will also be making a classic creamy coleslaw alongside. So far, prep has been a breeze. The grocery list was short this time, and I got away with only spending $36 at the grocery store. That might be due to the shorter list of ingredients. It also might be due to some of the pantry building that I've been doing through the first handful of weeks. I was a little bit stumped by the imposing wall of barbecue sauce options at the grocery store, but I ended up picking out one from Lily's Q, which is based in Chicago, where I'm from, so that seemed perfect. I've also loved having barbecue when I visit one of my best friends in North Carolina, so I picked up their North Carolina style. In the recipe, Allie notes that you can get bagged coleslaw mix instead of fresh cabbage and carrots if you're in a rush. But personally, since I'm not actually a big fan of coleslaw to begin with, I decided that getting fresh veggies would get me off on the right foot with this recipe. So as for prep, a few days ago, I made a batch of Neapolitan pizza crust, which I am using instead of the thin crust recipe called for here. I'm particularly interested to see how the crust turns out because I've been using bread flour, which has a pretty intense flavor. And this time I'm using a combination of 00 and high gluten flour for the Neapolitan dough. Last night, I made a really easy marinade for the chicken. Some olive oil, spices, salt and pepper, and made sure to put that in a bag to marinate ahead of time for about 12 hours. Next up for the salad, I will be mixing together the cabbage, carrots, and some onion, and adding mayonnaise, vinegar, and a bit of sugar, and then tossing everything together to combine. Apparently, this is a recipe that only gets better with some time in the fridge, so I will try to make that ahead of time. Next, I'll take that chicken that I've marinated ahead of time and figure out how to cook that without a grill. I might roast that in my oven and then finish it under the broiler for a little bit of a char. Before actually cooking the chicken, I'm going to make sure to coat it with barbecue sauce. As usual, I will proof the dough for a couple of hours at room temperature before starting to stretch it to make the pizzas. The pizzas are going to be topped with some olive oil, some sour cream, red onion, diced chicken, and some peaches, which is going to be an interesting combination. And as always, that will be topped with a mountain of cheese. All right, enough talk. Let's make some food. Next time, I will be back to share how everything tasted, what went right and wrong, and what I learned in the process. In the meantime, I can't wait to hear what you're cooking up at home.